Defendant entered the residence, went to the 3rd floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan and Kayla Gonzalez. He encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
So I'm going to lift the non-dissemination order.
Is Bryan Kohberger's defense team hiding something? The gag order's now lifted, and will we really now find out what happened to those 4 University of Idaho students? And an arrest made in the mysterious murder of a beloved paddleboarder. We've got some new details to share with you about the surprising suspect. And the grandfather of the teen who allegedly murdered her parents standing by her side. We'll show you the one-on-one interview this morning. Also coming up this hour, an honor killings expert and filmmaker joins us live to weigh in on the attempted honor killing trial. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Friday morning to you. We made it, my friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. We got a great show planned as we head into the weekend. So let's start it off like we always do. Grab that cup of coffee. It's time for my opening statement. Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. That was the advice that Mr. Rogers' mother shared with him when he was a little boy and would see scary things on the news. And I have to tell you, it's the helpers that I can't stop thinking about in the attempted honor killing trial. You know, my friends, the more I look at that awful video, I see much more than that vicious attack on Fatima Ali carried out by her father. I see heroes in that video. There are several good Samaritans who are helping to rescue Fatima. And think about it. Thank goodness that she was in a public place where people could come to her rescue. Can you imagine if her father encountered her alone? I would love to know what happens behind the closed doors of that home, because I didn't see her father hesitate in that attack in broad daylight with tons of people around. Did you? God bless all of those people who helped her. And kudos to them for acting rather than filming. You know, far too often, this is a pet peeve of mine, far too often people stand still and they hold their cell phones up to try to get a video rather than actually stepping in and trying to help save someone. So here we see everybody acting to help. And I say, bravo. The helpers, the heroes, they saved the day. Fatima's life arguably depended on them, and they didn't let her down. That's my opening statement on this Friday. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
I walked up to the front door and knocked on the front door. There was no answer. While I was knocking on the front door, there was a rake and a shovel, like right there in the driveway as well, that had like similar colored dirt on it still from that hole.
In Florida, we've got the in-law massacre case for defendant Shelby Neely. Court resumes this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Also happening in Florida, we've got a hearing scheduled for Dr. Thomas Kozowski. This guy's a plastic surgeon accused of killing an attorney who worked on a billing lawsuit against him. Court gets underway at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. And in Washington, court is dark today in the case I was just talking about. Testimony is going to resume in the attempted honor killing trial Monday at noon Eastern time. We begin this morning with brand new developments out of Maine in the mystery over a beloved paddleboarder's death. An arrest has been made in Sunshine Stewart's homicide. The suspect is a teenager. The 17-year-old boy was taken into custody on Wednesday. 48-year-old Sunshine Stewart found dead earlier this month after she was last seen paddleboarding at a local pond. The murder left the small town shocked. So here's what we know. Police say this teen suspect is from Maine, but was vacationing with his family for the summertime at the popular pond and campsite. He was taken into a juvenile facility. He's awaiting charges there. Police also revealed that Sunshine Stewart's cause of death was strangulation and blunt force trauma. Let's talk more about this. Let's bring in our guest. I got a great power panel to talk about this story this morning. I have criminal defense attorney and trial advocacy professor Don Malarczyk with us, and private investigator with Black Ops Private Investigations, also former Army intelligence officer Manuel Gomez. Good morning to you both. Manuel, we had you on this story the other day. Now the new development is shocking a lot of people. I'm curious if it shocked you.
Well, it didn't shock me because, unfortunately, Julie, and on the East Coast, we have a rise in youths committing murders from the ages between 12 and 17. It's insane, the amount of people that are being killed. But on this case, I'm glad they caught this kid because, one, she was a strong woman. She was a paddleboarder, and she was strangled, but she was facing him. To be strangled, that means she had to have scratched him, and that's where they got this DNA on. So I'm glad that they got him. But, Julie, I don't think that this was his first murder. I would not be shocked if they find out he's killed someone else before.
Wow. What makes you say that, Manuel?
Well, because one, the convenience of the murder, and two, because like I said, we've had numerous bodies in Maine found alongside the road. We've had 13 bodies found in the wooded areas. I wouldn't be shocked if he was one of them that assisted in those killings. This has like the Gilgo Beach feeling to it, the amount of bodies found.
Yeah, I know our viewers are familiar with that case, and we've talked about this New England serial killer that may be out there because of the number of deaths we've seen, as you pointed out. So who knows, Manuel? Lots of questions remaining. I appreciate you raising them this morning. Don Malarczyk, let's talk about something else. This kid is 17 right now. What do you expect for him in the process in terms of charging?
Sure. So what's going to happen, Julie, is the court and the prosecutors are going to evaluate whether or not he should be bound over, and I fully expect that he will be bound over and tried as an adult. In most states, Maine, Ohio, there are mandatory bindovers for certain offenses like murder if the child is over, say, the age of 14 or 15. So what's happening right now is the charges are being prepared. He's going to get appointed counsel if he can't retain counsel, and then the court and the prosecutor will start the process to bind him over, have him indicted as an adult. He'll be transferred into the adult court system. There'll be a judge appointed, and then he'll be facing the real adult penalties that are attached to murder in the state of Maine.
Don, that's really helpful. Thank you much for that. Let's talk a bit about whether this was random, whether Sunshine Stewart might have been targeted, allegedly, by this 17-year-old. Manuel, we understand he was staying there with his family, and she was staying there for a few days. She would regularly vacation there at the pond and had been there a couple days prior to her disappearing when she went out for that evening paddleboarding event. What do you think we can glean from this? Do you think that there could have been some component of stalking here, watching, planning with this crime? I'm curious, and I know we have limited facts, so I want to acknowledge that, but what do you see here in terms of targeting?
Well, I think you just said it, you nailed it right on the head. I do believe that there was some type of stalking here because, like you said, she was already there for a couple of days. Two, he's a local boy. He spends his summers there at this pond, all right, and we already know that fact. But do I think that he stalked her and saw it as an opportunity? Yes. This was a pretty woman in shape, okay, and you know, he saw the opportunity because this is a desolate area. It was quiet. And people, you know, take this for granted. And we have to learn from this case, Julie. And that is, just because you're in a quiet area doesn't mean you're not in a dangerous area.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I know, it's just awful. You know, we think about how people should be able to go out, enjoy nature, enjoy activities. And sadly, there are predators just looking to do people like her harm. Don, could we talk some more about this 17-year-old? So tapping into the wealth of experience you have as a criminal defense attorney, what needs to happen for him? I'm sure his family is concerned about him and representation. What are the considerations they need to be going through right now?
Sure, I'm sure his family is completely devastated, as are many families that are affected by this tragedy. But if I'm his attorney, I talk to the family and I start gathering my team. The first thing we do is we want to have some evaluation of the evidence. You know, what do they have? What does the prosecution have that links my client to this horrific crime? Is it DNA? Has it been tested? And then you also want to, at the same time, start working on the mitigation, and that is, what is going on with this 17-year-old? What is going on? Is there a history of childhood trauma? Is there a history of physical or sexual abuse? Is there a history of drug activity? Is there a history of mental health issues? Does he have mental health running in the family? Has he ever been committed? Has he ever been evaluated? So I want to get on my team an expert evaluator on the mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and really digging into his background, looking at school records, looking at other records where he may have been hospitalized or evaluated. You're trying to get a full 3D picture of who this kid is so you can answer questions to the court about, can he be rehabilitated? Is this the worst form of the offense? What is the appropriate punishment? That's really what is going to consume the defense for the next 6 to 9 months.
John, thank you so much for that. Boy, oh boy, it's a long road ahead for that defendant and, of course, for Sunshine Stewart's family. Manuel, before we let you go, would you kindly give us some safety tips? You know, you've been NYPD, you've got private investigations, you work now, you've seen everything all over the world serving in our military. Especially for a lot of women who watch this show. We have a lot of wonderful women who tune in every morning, you know that. When we think of this and you see, for me, I know seeing another woman out there just exercising, wanting to have fun, it's a tough pill to swallow. We've seen it with Rachel Morin going out for the jog. There have been so many cases, and it makes, I second guess myself a lot of times when I go to do something alone. What tips do you have for anybody who might be looking at this thinking, God, that could have been me?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question, because like 70% of my clients are women, and I'm always referring to them to carry some form of mace, some form of loud whistle. There's a program that I use and a site. It's called spyassociate.com, and there's a lot of devices that can protect women that cost maybe between $60 and $100, less than a woman's nail gel tips. Okay. It's something that I highly recommend for all women to carry. And they have one of these alert buzzers that is waterproof, that when you press the button, it lets out a siren sound that can be heard like up to like a block away. And it only costs like $40. It's on spyassociate.com. And again, you know, people remember, who is the most beautiful angel in heaven? The devil. Remember that. These demons out there, these evil guys, don't look ugly. A lot of them are beautiful. Mm-hmm. Be careful of everyone you see.
Yeah, wise words, Manuel. You're so right. Monsters don't all look like Charles Manson, right? We've seen the ones that look charming and like they wouldn't want to do us harm, but they do. And I love how you put it in perspective. You know, we can buy some kind of a device, you whistle, alarm, something, and it, like you said, it's going to cost less than what it costs us to go get our nails done. So thank you for that. Manuel Gomez, always appreciate you. Stay safe. We'll see you soon. Don Malarsik's coming with us. We're grateful for that, and we're grateful for your company at home this Friday morning. Go get some more coffee. Here's what's coming up next.
I just can't imagine, you know, the accuracy that gun had in her hands. It just, I don't think it could happen. I just don't think physically she could do it.
The grandfather of the Georgia teen who's accused of murdering her parents believes his granddaughter is innocent. You'll hear why. And the gag order now lifted in killer Kohberger's case, but not before a fight from the defense. So could they be hiding something? We'll talk about it coming up.
Two parents face a jury
over the attempted murder of their own daughter. Court TV takes you inside the trial that's torn a family apart.
The attempted honor killing trial. Live coverage continues Monday morning, only on Court TV.
Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law.
Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
The matriarch mastermind murder trial. Live coverage this August on Court TV.
Welcome back. Now for what's trending in true crime. We're one step closer to finding out what really happened to those 4 University of Idaho students who were murdered by Bryan Kohberger. A group of media organizations, including Court TV, petitioned for the judge in the case to lift the gag order. And on Thursday, he did it.
At this point, I just don't think that I can justify the continuation of the non-dissemination order. I think the rights of the public to information in this case is paramount, given the fact that a plea has been entered in this case, and so I'm going to lift the non-dissemination order.
Okay, so this means anybody involved in the case is now free to talk about it. The judge said that lifting the order does not automatically mean unsealing the documents right now. Now, the Kohberger defense team was opposing lifting the gag order before the sentencing on Wednesday. Okay, so the judge said he's going to go through those documents and going to look at them, and then they're probably going to be unsealed incrementally from what we can glean, because he's going to see what's appropriate to make public, what's not. Of course, we have to protect the privacy of those 4 beautiful victims. So what has us talking in our newsroom, we wonder if you're wondering the same at home, is the defense team trying to hide something that they didn't want the gag order lifted? Doesn't mean they need to go do interviews. What do you think about this? Let's bring back in attorney Don Malarsic and welcome in attorney Eric Bland. He's also the host of the Cup of Justice podcast. Good to see both of you gentlemen here on this story, and I want to draw on your respective experiences as we unpack this. So, Don, to you first, please. Having done criminal defense for so many years, do you see a valid concern here in keeping that gag order in place as this defense team wanted to do?
You know, Julie, I absolutely do. And here's why. Our obligation as defense attorneys is to protect our client. And that means to try to protect some confidential information, obviously, but also information in there that could really subject the client to, further possible targeting while he's in prison, further scorn, further abuse. I mean, those are really big, valid concerns. I learned during a capital murder trial, we were getting into my client's background and all the physical and sexual abuse he suffered. The next day he came to us and said, "You don't know how difficult it was for me last night in that cell after everybody in the jail watched everything on TV." So defense attorneys have to be sensitive to that, right? There's information in there that I'm sure is absolutely critical to the defense that if it gets out is going to be really, really damaging for this young man. And our obligation to our client goes long on after sentencing even. So these are the things that the defense attorneys are trying to balance. We don't have to win the internet. We don't have to win over public opinion. What we have to do is protect our client.
Really valuable information, Don. This is exactly why we wanted to ask you that question, because I think a lot of people, if they haven't done what you've done, can overlook that easily. So thank you for that. And looking at the other side, the media side, Eric Bland, really wanted to draw on your experience with this, having been a part of lots of media interviews and things. And we got to know you so well during the Murdaugh murders case as you were representing victims on the case. You do podcasting now. Surely you understand the thirst for information that the public has in wanting to know what happened to these beautiful kids and why. And so would you speak to that, as a lawyer, as somebody who also understands, the rights that somebody like Kohberger would have and how the judge has to balance that?
That's why we have a judge. The concerns raised by my colleague are genuine, but the judge will release that information which he deems to be appropriate that the public needs to know. The issues if Kohberger had, been abused as a child, or there are issues that are that shouldn't be in the public domain, he won't release them. But this is a very public case. I had a little bit of a problem with the defense trying to show that there was another perpetrator and they were going to prove it at the trial. It's kind of reminiscent when Mark Garagos did it, I think, in the Peterson case. I had no trouble with them attacking the evidence, alibi, everything. But for a defense attorney to take on the burden of proving that there was somebody else who did it. And I think that the evidence that's going to be released is going to show that Kohberger was 100% guilty of these crimes, heinous crimes, and that there was no exculpatory evidence that would have pointed to his innocence.
Eric, thank you for that. I really appreciate that, because I think a lot of people share those sentiments that you just shared with a lot of people, you know, felt like this is an open and shut case. We know that Gonsalves has wanted to put him on trial so that they could try to get the death penalty for him. They were that confident in the evidence. And so we wanted to focus in on some facts with you, brilliant attorneys, and see what you think of some of the most talked about issues with this case and whether the unsealing of the documents may give us confirmation. So it seems that Kohberger may have zeroed in on Madison Mogen after he saw her at the restaurant where she was working, that he asked her out. Apparently she said no. There's also a theory that he might have been what's called an incel, or an involuntarily celibate individual, who idolized another mass murderer named Elliot Rodger. Elliot Rodger was a 22-year-old self-proclaimed virgin who killed 6 people in 2014 and then himself. And shortly after the Idaho 4 murders happened, a Facebook user named Papa Rodger started leaving really disturbing messages in a University of Idaho murders Facebook page, posting, quote, "Did the killer stop at 4 victims out of exhaustion, convenience, or lack of knowledge?" Then goes on to say, "Did the killer shower at the crime scene afterward?" Then, of course, we later saw this bizarre selfie of freshly showered Bryan Kohberger given the thumbs up. How disgusting. So how credible are these incel allegations and perhaps this fascination with this other murderer? I want to get both of your thoughts here. Eric Bland, I'll start with you this time. What do you think, please?
I don't want to speculate, but there's obviously a psychological damage to this young man. There's something that forced him and compelled him to do, you know, the unthinkable here. He obviously was somebody who probably is on the spectrum, didn't have a real vibrant social life, but I'm not a psychologist. But I think a lot of it will reveal itself with what he did up to the murders and then after. And it'll show, you know, somebody who is a cold-blooded killer. Felt compelled to do it based on some kind of need. But I don't want to speculate that he was somebody who was celibate. I just don't have enough information to do that.
Sure. Yeah, no, smart analysis, Eric. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think cold-blooded killer. I think we all agree with that with this guy, that's for sure. And it's just the why that's so troubling. Dawn, what do you think when you hear about a lot of people speculating that maybe Kohberger created this name, Papa Rodger, after that other mass murderer that he idolized because of what they may have had in common sexually, and then also with the urge to commit homicide? What do you think when you hear those facts, Don?
Yeah, it's really bizarre, and it paints a really disturbing picture of Mr. Kohberger. But I think, you know, the defense has the best idea of anyone on the planet of why this happened. You know, one of the real valuable things about a plea in avoiding a trial is the answer of who did it is forever resolved. You know, you heard the judge ask Mr. Kohberger, "Are you pleading guilty because you did commit these offenses?" And he said yes. The more difficult question is the why. So what we know is the defense counsel has at least shared some information with the prosecution that raised some concern about the prosecutor's willingness to go forward and their confidence in getting a death verdict. Typically, in my experience, that is some kind of mental health, some documented serious mental illness that is much more than an incel or a person who acts out of a fascination with another serial killer. There's some type of serious mental illness in this young man's background that I think caused the prosecution to say, well, this doesn't really resolve the issue of who did it. We know who did it, but why? And how is a jury going to factor that in when weighing what punishment is appropriate? So I think the answer lies in the defense documentations, in their evaluations, and what they presented to the prosecution to secure a life verdict. Now, whether or not that all comes out at sentencing is going to be fascinating to see next week.
It sure is. Excellent analysis. You guys are awesome. Dawn Malarczyk, Eric Bland. You both have cases to win. We got to let you guys get to court, but thank you for making time to come on this program with us this morning. And speaking of next week, we got a special show coming up for you next week. So tune in next Wednesday. Special coverage of Bryan Kohberger's sentencing. It's going to happen at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Our Ted Rollins will be there alongside our Matt Johnson. Tune in for that. And coming up next this morning here on Opening Statements, we've got the grandpa speaking out in the deadly teen murder case as we remember the victims this morning and give them a voice. Plus, was this violent attack an attempted honor killing? Well, we've got an expert in that area. She's also a filmmaker. She's going to join us live to weigh in.
An arrest has been made in the case. Kristen Brock's 17-year-old daughter, Sarah Grace Patrick, has been taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault in connection with the deaths of her mother and her stepfather.
We are shining a spotlight on the 17-year-old girl who's accused of murdering her mother and her stepfather, and we are being a voice for the victims. So the victims are Kristen and James Brock, and the defendant is 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick. Police say she shot and killed them inside of their home back in February. They also say that she was the one who called 911 to report the killings. Police also say that Sarah Grace Patrick posted about the deaths on social media. But Sarah's grandfather doesn't believe that she is the killer, and he's speaking out to Court TV. Our Cody Thomas has more.
Good morning to you, Julie. That's right. I sat down with Sarah Patrick's grandfather, Dennis Nolan, who is still standing firm in his belief of her innocence. And he explained to me why. Take a listen.
You take a 100-pound girl and you hand her a 9mm pistol and you ask her to fire it, who doesn't have a lot of, I mean, I don't know if Sarah had ever shot a gun before. I mean, she was here, and whenever we shot guns, they were rifles. I never saw her shoot a pistol. But I just can't imagine, the accuracy that that gun had in her hands. I don't think it could happen. Mm-hmm. I think that, a 9mm has a recoil, and it's going to, it'd be hard for her as a novice to speak of, to fire as accurately as it was fired with the evidence that we know. I just don't think physically she could do it.
Dennis Nolan is the father of 4 children, 3 sons and 1 daughter, a daughter that is now the victim of a brutal murder. And now, with his granddaughter charged with that murder, along with the murder of her stepfather, Nolan says it's been a tough few months since the tragedy happened in February.
They're trying to make me lose a granddaughter. It's hard enough losing my daughter. But the thought of losing my granddaughter, she's looking at 70 years in jail. I'm sorry, I'm 78 years old. I'd have to live to be 150 to see her again.
Nolan also described their family dynamic as normal, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. He also says police are looking into another suspect that he could not give any details on. And Julie, Nolan also tells me that as far as right now, what he's hoping for is that Sarah at least gets bond. That's the latest on this story, Julie. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks to Cody Thomas for that report. In that interview, our hearts go out to Grandpa because think of this. This is just awful. He suffered a terrible loss, and now his child's life is on the line here. So you can understand how he would be feeling very upset, and he's certainly entitled to the opinions that he has. Let's talk about the facts, though. There's a first time for everything, right? If this young girl did what police say she did. Let's bring in someone who's been following this case, criminology expert, author, and professor, Dr. Debbie Goodman. Dr. Debbie, good morning to you. Hearing Grandpa's interview, I know you're such a compassionate person. In addition to being such a brilliant person, you have so much compassion for victims, and so I'm sure you feel for him. In terms of what he was saying, though, about his argument and rationale is almost like this is an impossibility that this 17-year-old could pick up a 9mm and fire it at her mom and dad. What do you think about his opinion on those facts?
Good morning, Julie, and of course my condolences to the families on this haunting and harrowing loss. In terms of the grandfather, Mr. Nolan, of course, we would understand and appreciate the magnitude of emotion that he himself is enduring. First, the murder of his daughter and son-in-law, and then potentially at the hands of the granddaughter. So we understand the emotions that come with the residual effect, if you will, when family members are now grappling with the reality of a murder, a double homicide. So indeed, he's entitled to his views, his opinions, but sometimes, Julie, as we know with familicide, when a family member kills a family member, the rose-colored glasses go on, if you will, meaning sometimes parents see their children through rose-colored glasses. They only want to see the good, and same thing for the grandparents. So ultimately, the facts will be revealed, and if this young lady did what she's alleged to have done, then certainly he will have to deal with that harsh reality. But we did hear the police spokesperson say they have mountains of evidence, and that in and of itself is a startling statement, because we know at times law enforcement representatives keep the the cards close to the chest, so to speak, when it comes to these issues. So we will await the revelation of the evidence.
Yes, yes, Dr. Debbie. Great insight as always, and I have something to share that could be helpful with our viewers at home. I was sharing this with my team this morning. When we don't see the affidavit, we don't see the criminal complaint, and we don't know what that mountain of evidence is, right? And in wondering why, I think, based on my experience, it's probably because of her age right now and the process of getting her. In the state where I practice, it was called decertification, where you take the juvenile into adult court. You charge them as an adult, try them as an adult, and then everything's going to become public. So initially, things may be sealed off in the juvenile court. I'm guessing that is why that we don't have the criminal complaint yet. We just know that there was a warrant out for her arrest, and she turned herself in on that warrant. And so I think once we get the first date and we get the appropriate legal repositioning of her into adult court, I think we'll see all of that. Dr. Debbie, something that we saw from her that was very public, and there's video of it, I want to show it to you now, is when Sarah Grace Patrick gave the eulogy, and a very tearful one, at the funeral for her mom and stepdad. Here we go.
I just wanted to say goodbye to my mama and Jamie since we never got the chance to. I was so used to you guys always being here to the point that I never once thought to imagine y'all not being here. And to have a single clue how much I needed y'all until now. Although there's nothing we can do to bring them back, we still have control over how we treat people with us today. I love you guys, and so do I. And so do they. I'm sorry.
Okay, Dr. Debbie, for anybody who sees this, how do we reconcile these things? If she is the killer and then she's getting up there doing the eulogy, help us make this make sense.
Right, Julie. Sometimes we try to make sense of the senseless, and it's hard. It's hard for people to look at a teenage girl, but we had a similar circumstance, as you recall, when we talked about Carly Gregg, a Mississippi teenager who shot and killed her mother and attempted to kill her stepfather. And we saw her even smiling and giggling in court. So it's very difficult, just the whole concept of who could do this and why. You know, we always want to know the why. Hopefully one day we will know. But the reality is, if this young lady did what she's accused of doing, a double homicide, aggravated assault, could stand up in such a public forum and almost act as if she had nothing to do with it. Plus, very concerning if she is indeed, if she's guilty of this, and then she, as we know, allegedly reached out to other individuals on the social media platforms, podcasters and such, wanting a spotlight on this case. But why? Why does she want the spotlight on her? Again, we talked about fame the other day. Was she carving out some type of, fame for herself, killing the family to gain attention? manipulating media so that people would feel empathetic toward her. It's tough to tell in that clip, you know, was it genuine tears? Did actually water shed from her eyes? Or is it what we call the alligator tears, when people act like they're very sad and distraught, but truly it's not for, you know, anybody other than themselves?
Right, Dr. Debbie, we've seen that time and time again. Who knows with this 17-year-old? So many more questions. As soon as we get the affidavit of probable cause and have more facts, we'd love to have you back on and do even more analysis on this one. We know no signs of forced entry, and we know that it was the 5-year-old younger sister who found the parents, you know, so imagine the trauma that poor child has been through, now being orphaned, just awful. Dr. Debbie Goodman, thank you so much for all of your great insight this morning. We'll look forward to seeing you back here very soon. Have a wonderful weekend. And as we go to break, my friends, we want to remember the victims in this case, James and Kristen Brock. They were together for nearly 10 years, were raising their 3 children together. That little 5-year-old girl, now orphaned, without them here. These people taken way too soon. We're remembering them here as we continue following this case on Opening Statements. We'll be right back. Bryan Kohberger accepted a plea offer.
A shocking turn of events.
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Convicted killer Bryan Kohberger will learn his fate for murdering 4 Idaho college students.
He is the boogeyman.
And come face to face with the families of his victims.
And I pray that we have justice.
The sentencing of Bryan Kohberger. Live coverage begins Wednesday morning, only on Court TV.
So were Ihsan and Zara Ali trying to kill their teenage daughter Fatima over an arranged marriage? Well, the state's case in Washington resumes on Monday in the attempted honor killing trial. The jury got to see this key piece of evidence this week, the bus surveillance video of the violent attack. Now, this happened near Fatima's former school, where you can see her, her dad, and her boyfriend, Isaiah. According to court documents, Fatima told police that her father had threatened her with an honor killing for rejecting an arranged marriage to an older man. But the jury will not be hearing that part of her claims because the judge ruled that the terms honor killing and arranged marriage are way too prejudicial for the jury to hear them. So, will those banned terms tip the scales of justice? And was that an attempted honor killing that we see in the bus surveillance video? Our special guest knows all about honor killings. She is a co-producer and director of the film The Price of Honor, and she has been on the program before. It's been a few years, but we're so happy to have expert and documentary filmmaker Nina Najad back on with us. Nina, good morning to you. Thank you for coming back on the program.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me again.
Of course, of course. You've shared fascinating insight with us, and you've done so much research about honor killings, and your film, again, The Price of Honor, this documentary about honor killings, and I think a lot of people in the United States don't really know much about them. You hear the term, you go, what? And it almost sounds kind of hard to understand. So is this a little more common than most people may realize?
I believe it is, especially in certain parts of the world. In America, unfortunately, because people don't know much about it, especially the police, a lot of times, if it does happen, it just gets labeled as homicide. But it is common, yes.
You know, it's so sad. I mean, and we look at this video. I know you've seen it, Nina, and you watch it. It's heartbreaking. And we've slowed it down here because before all the melee really ensues, it's hard to see everybody. But right there, you know, you see Dad putting his daughter in a chokehold, and then her boyfriend Isaiah jumping on Dad, trying to get Dad off, and other bystanders and helpers trying to come in and stop this. In your view, does this look like an attempted honor killing?
To be honest, it's probably going to be a not so popular statement. I do not believe this was an attempted honor killing, only because that is not something that they would ever do in public in such a brazen manner. Normally, honor killings are done behind closed doors with possibly other male family members involved. So that way, you know, if anything was to happen, they could say, well, she went off to Iraq. That's where she is. So there would be no questions asked. They will never have that happen in public in such a manner. Now, is there a threat of honor killings? Possibly, because then one could question why was she being sent to Iraq. But I think this was an act of a very enraged, angry father with a very defiant daughter. And of course, having a boyfriend there, I'm sure didn't help either. But no, I don't believe what that was an attempted honor killing.
This is fascinating insight you're sharing, Nina. We were talking about this this morning, my team members and I, and that was one of the questions I was going to ask you about. Do they typically happen behind closed doors? Is that what you've discovered in your research?
Yes. It's always done very privately. Again, sometimes other male family members would be involved, but they would never, ever do it in such a brazen manner out in public.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Now, tell me, in terms of the violence here, could this be, I mean, still an attempted homicide? Doesn't mean how we characterize it, but that he's angry and suddenly snaps and he gets enraged and I suppose, what would be the better way to ask it? With an honor killing, I guess what you're telling me, this would be more methodically planned out, private, maybe involving another man, so that there would be deniability. Where here, we could still have a homicide, just not the type of planned out honor killing type homicide that wasn't intended.
Exactly. Yes, I think this was just a very enraged, angry father. It was a moment of just absolute anger. And again, you know, I've been following the case and the trial, and with the boyfriend being right there, and at one point, even Fatima had said that he was, you know, patting her on the back, and that is something you do not do with a Muslim woman, you know, if she's not married. And so I'm sure the father seeing that probably enraged him even more. And I think things escalated and got out of hand.
Oh, tell us a little more, if you would, please, Nina. This is really helpful insight. What does that indicate, even though most Americans who may not be familiar with Muslim culture might think, oh, this is comfort, this is a gesture of comfort and kindness and compassion, where Mr. Ali saw it as something else. What did he see that as?
So that is something that when it comes to young girls, especially unwed young girls, they're not to be touched by any other male members, even their own family members. So it's considered very disrespectful and rude. And for the boyfriend to, of course the boyfriend didn't know, but for him to do that, the father saw that as a very, basically, to use the term, he soiled his daughter by touching her. So that, I think, brought in more of the anger, and then it led to what happened.
Sure. Boy, and Nina, this is fascinating.
Young girls are not to be touched.
Yeah. I could talk to you all day and hear you have so much knowledge to share. I think that these defense teams would be very wise to bring someone like you into this case to explain and help, you know, kind of, you know, translate what's going on, you know, between two cultures and this awful collision that happened here outside of that bus stop. Nina Najad, congratulations on all of your success. Your film, again, The Price of Honor. Every good wish as you continue filmmaking and researching, and of course, would love to have you back on the program again sometime.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
Nina Najad, thank you so much. Take good care. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements. Friends, you can watch it or share the episode. Go to courttv.com. Click on the Shows tab to do that.